we look at 20 years of an ANC government to round the figure off, would you say that it has been lacking in applying its mind to the broadband situation, and as a result now we've fallen way behind and we're paying for it financially in the business sector?
Well, I think government's been quite open about that. And in fact, the current leadership of the ministry, we're under enormous pressure to deliver on broadband. In fact, only this morning, before we had this meeting, the department and I were exchanging in a teleconference on what is about the final version of the broadband policy, which we hope to take to Cabinet within 2 weeks. In fact, last Friday, we drew some 100 experts to comment on our broadband policy. And on the 11th and 12th of November, we're going to have some experts from the international community come to comment on the policy. We're going to take it very shortly also to Strategic Integrated Project 15, which is part, of course, of the National Infrastructure Plan of the government.
And then to Cabinet. You somewhat, though, that here we sit with all these wonderful ideas, and I was in Brussels recently at the European Union.
Yes.
I was attacked, actually,
yes.
for us being very good at ideas, very good at the tip of Africa. We're able to show the rest of Africa and help it forward.
Yes.
But we do very little. We talk a lot and do very little. I hear you saying about these meetings, I hear you talking about the proposals, but we've heard all this before. Doesn't that sort of concern you a little bit?
Well, it's true. I think it's general. Most governments, political parties, say more than they can actually do, and often don't deliver what they promised, to the extent at least that they made those promises. And that will apply to us as well. We've been open about it, increasingly open about it. But judge us over the next few months as we, within the Ministry of Communications and Department, begin to deliver. In fact, next week, on the 5th of November, we appear before the Portfolio Committee on Communications to report back on what we call the 20th August program. We went to Parliament on the 20th of August with 11-point program. Now we're going to report on progress. I think there has been significant progress, and in the next 5 weeks, there'll be outcomes on broadband, on the cost of communications being reduced. That's an ICASA function primarily, within policy directives that we provide as government. Then there's the issue of digital migration. We are now reaching a stage where we have to take a concerted decision on whether these decoders, if you like, to use a simple term, will have conditional access or control, if you like, or not. That matter is now being taken to Cabinet. Then we have a green paper, which is going to set out the government's view on where ICT should be taken, flowing from which will be a new set of legislation to take into account the changes that have taken place in the world of technology.
Where do you see those, let's call them TV top boxes, for want of a better expression? When do you see them coming into effect? Because the digital migration should have taken place in 2008, in time for the World Cup. It never did. If we look at that, we're 5 years behind already. How many more years will it be before we get that migration?
Right. The International Telecommunications Union, the United Nations structure that deals with this matter, has set June 2015 as the deadline for South Africa and the continent as a whole to have moved towards digital terrestrial television. Now, we have already, through Centec, provided the infrastructure to 82% of the country for DTT, as it's called, digital migration, if you want. And by March next year, it'll be 84%. The remaining 16% of the country, for a variety of reasons, will get digital TV through satellite. We have already set up a team to assist with the set-top boxes being rolled out. Education of the public will begin shortly. And in fact, what we have decided is, because there is a major feud about whether these set-top boxes, decoders, should have a control system or not, we have decided to go ahead with satellite digital TV being launched very shortly. We're hoping the president will be available to formally launch it very shortly.
That means an encryption box.
Well, the matter of whether the box will have an encryption or not is a matter that Cabinet will decide on before the end of this year, possibly the last Cabinet meeting of the year, which is the first Wednesday in December. We have processed the negotiations. In fact, we brought in facilitators to bring together the broadcasters. They were unable, regrettably, to arrive at consensus. They have given us various options. We are now going to take it through the Cabinet process to decide on.
What we're actually saying is that two private enterprises are delaying the digital process.
Yes, in fact, the tension between two major private sector broadcasters is doing precisely that.
You can't say it, but I can. DSTV, which is the multi-choice, and ETV are the people at odds with each other, let's say, for a polite terminology.
Well, I don't want to get embroiled in that.
No, that's why I said I will say it.
Yes, but the point I'm trying to make is at the end of the day, government has given all of them a full hearing, but government must govern. We must govern now, and we must take a decision. We've heard them. We've tried to facilitate a consensus. Regrettably, it's failed. Now we have to be decisive and go forward, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And you judge us, let's say, within 8 weeks to see where we've gone. We are going to move very decisively forward once Cabinet's taken a decision on whether the set-top box should have a conditional access system or not. And then what we're calling for is the fullest cooperation of all stakeholders, whatever the government's decision is on the set-top box issue. We are very clear. We have to move rapidly. We have no choice. And we are going to be very decisive. And you judge us by what we do, not so much what I say.
It would be remiss of me to overlook the next part of your portfolio that falls under you, and that's ICASA. Because ICASA has drawn enormous criticism ever since it was originally the IBA, and it's gone on to be ICASA. Its time delays, its lack of granting licenses. It has recently redeemed itself slightly in the public side by cutting the cost of communication with Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, and so on. But it has not improved itself in the broadcasting field, i.e. licenses. If we look at South Africa, and this is a long prologue somewhat, but if one looks at licenses in the United Kingdom, over 400, in Australia, over 300, in America, 12,000, and we have a piddling 80-odd licenses granted here, and yet you say it's the most concentrated media. In somewhat terms of that, that's a bit of a contradiction, where you can take the United Kingdom, for instance, and put it in the Kruger National Park.
Yes.
Now, there is a problem there, obviously, that other licenses aren't granted.
Yes, well, firstly, I'm not so sure whether one can draw easy analogies between developed countries like the United Kingdom and our own country. They have a different history and culture and a longer evolution of their democracy, obviously. But I take your point. Nobody I know of in this sector has a good word to say about ICASA, except, as you suggested now, with its recent decision to put out draft regulations where it's providing for a substantial reduction in the costs of communications, right, with cell phones in particular. Now, that is merely a draft set of regulations. I know there's considerable pressure being put on ICASA by powerful stakeholders in the mobile cell phone industry to actually not go ahead with those proposals. Of course, ICASA is independent. We cannot prescribe to them. We hope, however, they'll stand their ground. And whatever decision they take finally, having heard the parties concerned, it will be based on sound judgment. Now, in respect of broadcasting, I agree. They have had hearings recently, and what I understand is that they are going to issue more licenses. They tell us repeatedly that they need more funding and more research and other technical and other support. And we say to them, yes, we understand, but given that there are these tight budgetary constraints, it's not going to be easy to secure those resources. Why don't you show us that you're doing, with the limited resources you have,
Minister,
a good job?
Can I just interrupt you there? Because there lies the crux of the problem.
Yes.
If ICASA were to grant those licenses in time, timeously,
Yes.
and more licenses, it would have more income.
Yes.
At the moment, we talk about an independent from government, but while government's paying its wages, it's certainly not independent.
Well, there are constitutional provisions for ICASA, and there are legal definitions of its role. At most, what a minister can do, or government generally, is provide policy directives. We can't take decisions on various areas of the ICT sector.
I hear you, but is it a matter of concern to your department?
What in particular?
The role of ICASA and its freedom.
Well, we feel that ICASA is clearly independent of the government and the majority party. Of course we agree. But they're not independent of the country and the public and the needs of the public out there.
That's a balance.
There's a sense in which some of them within ICASA almost seem to think that they're not just independent of government and the majority party, but the country too. They can't be. They're funded in any case by the taxpayer. I thought you might be suggesting that because we're funding them, therefore they cannot be independent. I don't think that's the issue for me, at least.
I think I deliberately didn't do that.
Yes. Well, because who would they be funded by otherwise? And if they were funded by the private sector, obviously the independence will be even more compromised, because those who contribute more to the funding of ICASA would probably, well, possibly, not probably, end up with getting outcomes favorable to them. So it has to be funded by the state, by the public purse. What it can't do is serve the needs and interests of the government of the day necessarily, or the majority party. But it must serve the needs and interests of the public. And it's certainly in the interests of the public that we have more competition in the broadcasting sector, that there are more radio stations in particular available, especially in the indigenous languages, because it's radio, after all, that reaches the full length and breadth of this country, doesn't it? So in short, yes, I agree. We are engaging with them. There's a green paper that's about to be released before the end of this month that is looking at the entire ICT sector, not least the role of ICASA and regulators more generally throughout the world, and the changes that are being considered elsewhere in the world too, in established democracies, on the role of regulators in a new technological age.
I think in the private sector, what puzzles them is the amount of time that it takes to grant a license.
Yes, that's very regrettable and unfortunate, and we would like to apply our mind as the department and ministry in further consultation with ICASA, obviously, and other stakeholders on how we can assist ICASA to be more effective and efficient. Now, we mean to have early in the new year, we're going to discuss this further with ICASA, an engagement with ICASA and other stakeholders in a dialogue to, without interfering with their independence and autonomy, see how we can assist. And I would hope, I don't know what the Green Paper says just yet, I'll know within the next 2 weeks. I hope that the Green Paper has addressed the issue of ICASA very directly and in a useful manner. And if it hasn't, we will seek to insert the relevant issues within the Green Paper, or use the policy discussions flowing from the Green Paper that are going to occur over the next 3 months to address that issue. Remember, of course, that we're going to get a white paper sometime in the second half of next year, out of which will flow a new legislative dispensation on the ICT sector.